Well, I'm making this video today so that you have a resource to check your minerals study guide to prepare for your quiz. And so that had a handful of things that you need to know and be able to do to perform at a mastery level on the quiz coming up. And so let's check those out. So the first thing you need to know is the relationship between rocks and minerals, which really connects to why we're studying minerals first and rocks second. And the way that I look at it here is that there are actually three ways to say it. The first one is to say that minerals are the building blocks of rocks. And what I mean by that is that if you think of Legos, those are little pieces. Those would be like the minerals. And the creation you make out of the Legos would be like the rock. Another good comparison is to say minerals are the ingredients of rocks. So if you think about chocolate chips and flour and sugar, those would be like minerals. And then when all that's put together in the cookie would be like the rock. And then maybe the simplest way to say it is that rocks are made of minerals. So we're studying the ingredients first before we study how nature mixes up minerals in the rock cycle. So how would we actually know a mineral when we found it in nature? And the answer to that is minerals have to display not just most of these traits, but all four of these traits. They have to be solid, meaning at the surface. They can melt in the rock cycle. We'll learn that more later this week. They also have to be non-living, natural, which means not man-made, and they also have to display a crystalline structure. Now, I'm okay on your quiz if you just say made of crystals, but technically it's called a crystalline structure. They have to have a repeating geometry, repeating shapes to them that we call crystals. Not all minerals have the same shape, size, color of crystal, but they all have crystals. So our next question is that you need to really be able to define and understand some key mineral properties that we use to identify minerals. The first one here is color, which is on the outside, so it's easy to see, but it's not super reliable because the outside color can change due to weathering, which is why geologists, also known as earth scientists, would prefer streak. Streak tells you the inside color, and it's definitely more reliable. So if you only had your choice of one of the two of those, you would want streak. Now, luster is the way a mineral reflects light. Some of them are glassy in luster, earthy, which really means it doesn't reflect at all. Sometimes it's pearly, sometimes greasy in the way it reflects light. And then you may remember last week performing scratch tests or watching them being performed to detect a mineral's hardness. And so thinking about it this way, if a mineral is hard, it will resist being scratched. If it's soft, it'll scratch easily. And so a guy with the last name Mo came up with this hardness scale. And all minerals fall somewhere on this 1 to 10 scale, with 10 being the hardest and 1 being the softest. Okay, now our next thing that I wanted you to know about for the quiz coming up is special properties. Now, this is a key word here, this word some. Not all minerals have these, but if they do display a special property, it makes it really easy to identify. Here's the first one, taste. And an example of that is halite. Halite is also known as rock salt. And so not that we would do this, but if we were going to look minerals, we could find halite easy. Another one is fluorescence. And on your quiz, I'm fine if you just say glow. And if you were in class with me, you actually got to see that occur. They have electrons in their chemical structure that get excited by ultraviolet light or a black light. And as they come back down to normal energy level, they release light. And then finally, the chemical reaction. And we also saw in class that calcite is an example of a mineral that will do this. It will react with an acid like vinegar, and we saw bubbles coming off of it. Now here it is again. Some minerals do this, not all. All minerals have color, streak, luster, and hardness, or some sort of luster. Now this next one is more just like to inform you, but you remember using this chart, and let me bring it up here for a second. Let's see if it's going to let me do that. I think it will. Okay, sorry for the delay here. Well, it really is not doing exactly what I'd hoped there. But the common minerals chart that I'm talking about is the one that we used in our mineral identification lab, where the minerals were arranged from the softest to the hardest, and then it told you all sorts of properties. You will have that on your quiz to use. And so You may want to actually look back at that and just refresh some of the vocab on there. And then finally, our last thing that we learned before this is the difference between silicate and non-silicate minerals. So we identify or tell minerals apart by their properties, but scientists actually classify minerals into two big groups based on their chemistry. And the names of the two groups are silicates and non-silicates. So once you understand silicates, non-silicates are really the opposite. And so silicate minerals have to contain both the elements silicon and oxygen, which means they're always compounds, right? Compounds are two or more types of atoms or two or more elements, where an element is just one type of atom. So it is okay if a mineral has silicon, oxygen, and a whole bunch of other stuff. It's still a silicate as long as it has both of those in chemical ingredients. Now, non-silicates cannot contain both at the same time. So here's what's weird. A mineral can have silicone in it and still be a non-silicate if it doesn't also have oxygen. And kind of the weird thing, I think, is that 90% of the minerals in Earth's crust are silicates versus 10 non-silicates. They're way more common, yet the requirements are actually more strict when you think about it. But silicone and oxygen are two common elements in Earth's crust. So that's what you need to know for your quiz tomorrow. I hope you found this review session helpful.